on Their Journey podcast, hosted by your one and only host, Mr. Antoine Wade, me. Let's talk about Black Heights. Black Heights is a vision to prepare African Americans for upward mobility in management and leadership positions around the world. And we do this by training, coaching, and providing exposure to young business professionals like Mr. Jared Martin, who I have on the podcast today, to give a perspective of how their experience has been within the business world. Let me introduce Jared real fast. Jared is a risk management consultant at Euler Hermes, North America. He has an undergrad in marketing from North Carolina A&T. I met Mr. Martin through my wife, Teresa. My wife, Teresa and Jared actually worked at Enterprise Fleet Management together. And I had an opportunity to meet Mr. Martin. I've been following his career ever since. Gentleman has a lot going on. He's had a wonderful professional career in sales. He has a podcast that he hosts. He's a sports announcer as well. This guy has the energy, and I'm excited to have him on the show tonight. So, Jared, how you doing tonight, brother?
Man, doing fantastic. Excited to be on here, man, and definitely, man, feeling still really good about my Clemson Tigers, who just won the national title. So, shout out to them. So, yeah, man, feeling good.
All right. So let's do this. So we got some folks right now who I'm getting in the chat saying that they can't see us. So let me do something real fast. Let me put you in the screen real fast, Mr. Martin. And let's do this. All right. Okay. Hold on for a second. Let's do this. All right. Positions. Perfect. Let's do that. Mr. Martin. Boom. Okay. Nope. I don't like that picture of you. Let's do this one. Guys, bear with us. We're going to be right with you in a couple minutes. And thank you so much, Mrs. Tamara Wade, for letting me know that you can't see us. All right, so let's do this. Awesome. Okay. Look at this. Technology is absolutely fantastic. There you go, Mr. Martin. I got you looking good. Smile for the camera. Smile for the people. All right. So here we go. Let's do this. Fade. All right. Yep. I think they can see us now, Jared. What do you think, man?
Oh, man, we live. We're live now, man. We live.
Do I need to do another introduction, y'all? I don't think so. All right, who do you got in the chat tonight? So, guys, let's make this interactive like we always have. I think you guys know the story. We got Mrs. Tiffany Wade in the chat, Mrs. Tamara Wade in the chat. My brother, he's talking about Clemson already. Guys, Let's make this interactive. Ask questions. Let's have some fun tonight. So, Jared, you told the people that you were doing good, man. You ready to do the lightning round and this or that?
Yeah, man, I'm feeling good. Let's go.
All right, so guys, you know what the lightning round is about. It's a round of this or that. We're going to do this for 2 minutes. All right, let me get my timer right. Here we go. All right, let's make sure I don't have any more technology challenges here. All right. You are live. Thank you, Miss Tamara. What's up, Ashley? How are you? Okay. Boom, we got the timer going. All right, Jared. First question is, would you rather be 4 feet tall or 8 feet tall?
8 feet tall.
8 feet tall. All right. 6 inches
NBA.
taller. Okay. 6 inches taller or 600K richer?
Definitely 6 inches taller, because I could make that 600K with the 6 inches.
Oh,
jumper's nice.
I got you. Okay. You know what? I would have chosen the 600K richer, man. I just would have. What about be a celebrity or a regular person?
Regular person, man. I would never want to be followed around anywhere I go, so I take the regular person path.
Got it. Cookout or In-N-Out burger?
Oh, man, it's cookout all day. Club style cheeseburger, tray fries, hush puppies, and a fruit punch. Every time. Let's go.
All right. This one is a good one. LeBron James or the Clemson Tigers?
I'm going to go with LeBron just because of the fact that I'm a huge Clemson fan, but my boy Braun gets so much hate, man. I got to be the supporter, so I'm gonna go with Braun.
Okay. Okay. All right. Which cities, Atlanta or Pittsburgh?
Oh man, that's no hands down, man. It's Atlanta. I can't deal with snow 7 months out of the year, man. Too much snow.
All right. 1 million in your bank account or an IQ of 145 plus?
Oh man, I take that the IQ of 145 plus. Money can be made, man. It's the ideas that's going to generate it. So if I can get one of those genius ideas from that IQ, then I'll more than make that million.
All right. See. All right. Okay. Okay. What about $10,000 in gold or 10,000 in Bitcoin?
Gold, man. That Bitcoin will be gone by tomorrow. So I'll take it in gold.
All right. What about 6 sons or 6 daughters?
I'm gonna go with the 6 daughters. I got 2 daughters myself, so I'd be wrong if I said something other than that. So I'll go with the 6 daughters.
All right. So we're already at 2 minutes, but you know what? I want to go a little bit further. This will give the chance for the guests, the people watching, to know a little bit more about you. All right. A life full of ups and downs or a monotonous life?
Life of ups and downs, man. You learn just as much from the downs as you do from the ups, and so I think that's a more fun route.
My man, my man. A live-in massage therapist or a live-in chef?
Chef, I love to cook. I don't know who I'd be massaging. That could get really awkward.
But what a live-in chef? Live-in chef or a live-in massage therapist for you, not for you to do it.
Oh, if I can have one. Okay, I got you.
One. Yeah.
I'll have the massage therapist because I love to cook. So then I don't have to have somebody do that. The massages would be nice though. So
all right, two more. 1 million Instagram followers or $100,000?
1 million Instagram followers because then I can use advertisements and make the $100,000.
My man. All right, a month without your car or a month without the internet?
Give me a month without the car, man. I got Uber with my internet. I can get around.
All right, guys. So, again, guys, let's make this interactive. You know, Jordan, what's up, man? How you doing, cousin? Clark said gold. Yep, I hear you on that one. All right. You know, you'll be surprised. Bitcoin going to bounce back, guys. Don't be surprised. I'm the person who said it.
I don't know about that one.
All right, so let's jump in a little bit further into the get to know you part, Jared. So tell everyone in the audience tonight what your journey is, right? Tell them who Jared Martin is and Jared Martin's journey.
Well, just a little backstory. I'm from South Carolina. Grew up in the super country, Cheraw, South Carolina, then moved to Fort Mill, which is outside of Charlotte. Huge Clemson fan because I went to Clemson, played tennis there for my first couple years, and then finished up in North Carolina A&T, Aggie Pride, where I played tennis there. Ironically, both of those two won national championships in football this year. Let's go. After I got out of school, I moved to Atlanta and started working some odd and random sales jobs because, you know, everybody wants, people with marketing degrees, but they want them to have experience, and I had no experience. So I initially started selling real estate while I was in college, but none of it had to do with my marketing. So my sales journey started as a 21-year-old where I got my real estate broker's license, bought my first house, and started trying to flip houses when I was like 21 years old. And then when I got to Atlanta, sold some like Braves tickets, a whole lot of different things, and got some really good experience out of it.
Wow.
And then I worked for American Express. So American Express was my first real big boy job, I'd say. I did business-to-business sales and did really well. It was something that I've always had a really good, personality for sales in the sense that I've never met a stranger. I'm never really concerned with talking to people on the phone or in person. And when you do door-to-door sales, selling Braves tickets, especially in 08, 09 during a recession when nobody's buying any any items that aren't of necessity, what ends up happening is you develop a tough skin where you're not really afraid to talk to anybody. So when I worked for Amex, I led the program we had in sales for 18 of my last 19 months. I was there, did really well, and then had an opportunity to come over to Enterprise, and left and went to Enterprise and started washing cars, and started in the management trainee program. And the reason I did that was I loved my job at Amex, but I didn't think it had a lot of upward mobility. And I looked at it and said, hey, I was making $55,000 as a 25-year-old, and I said, this is great for a 25-year-old, but it's not going to be great for a 35-year-old.
Yep.
And so I took a $20,000 pay cut, started for $35,000 in Enterprise, and subsidized the money I was not making by teaching tennis lessons on the side to be able to build up what I wanted to do. So I did that, worked really well at Enterprise, and moved on up from management trainee to assistant manager to branch manager, and manager over a few. Came over to Enterprise Fleet, which is our direct business-to-business sales side, and did really well there. That was my one of the best business moves I made, and I sold really well. Ended up getting up to number 1 in the country at Fleet Management. Finished the year number 2 in the country by like percentage points, and I was so upset about that. But after that, I got promoted to at the backstory of that is real quick. I made bets with like all of my VPs and stuff that if I finished number, they were going to buy me like new golf clubs, a Scotty Cameron putter. My GM was going to take me to the TaylorMade facility and get a custom built driver. And I finished number 2 off of like a technicality, and I didn't get anything. So I'm still somewhat salty about it. Every time I play around the golf, I think of the clubs I should be playing with. But, either way, did that pretty well, got promoted up to area sales manager. So I took over and moved to Pittsburgh, and I was over all of Western PA, part of Ohio, and all of West Virginia. And did that for a year and a half, and then realized that I was not a fan of snow 7 months out of the year. And saw a terrific opportunity to move back and start working for Euler Hermes. So and moved back to Atlanta to be closer to, we had my wife and I have 2 daughters, one that's now 3 months. So my wife was pregnant. We looked at it and said it was a good opportunity to get back close to family, and we were going to have some kind of support system. Yep. And then I had the opportunity where I was reached out to by Euler Hermes. So I took the opportunity, and I've been back here now since about May. So it's been an exciting journey, but it's been a very cool journey because really enjoying what I'm doing with Euler Hermes now. And I think a lot of the things I learned from the previous jobs are really helping me now with my current role.
Wow, that's a good story. Wow, Jared, that's awesome, man. So, you talked about North Carolina A&T, is where you get your education. Talk about, what your education has done for you, right? And why did you choose marketing as a field of study?
Well, I can tell you this. I talk to people, and for me, I'm still an avid kind of sports junkie. My sport in college was tennis, but my favorite sports to probably play are probably golf and basketball. And I go to the gym and play ball probably 4 or 5 days a week. Yep. And there's some guys that I talk to, the young guys, and they're like, hey, what do you think about going to college? And I always tell them, I'm like, when you go to college, I couldn't tell you anything that I necessarily learned from let's just say a technical standpoint that I use in my everyday life. Yep. I said, but the way that it works is if you don't go to college, you don't get the opportunities that you're going to need to be able to be successful. And if you don't get those opportunities, you don't have the ability to walk into that door. And a lot of college is about, do you have the persistence to be able to get the job done with whatever it is? Do you see tasks through? And so I chose marketing because of the fact of I always looked at it from the standpoint of being I was always a very social person, and I looked at a lot of things where I took originally a psychology class, and it was a business psychology class that spoke about the way that companies market to people. And talked about how the scents in the room will maybe change your buying habits, or if you go into a store where they want you to or a restaurant where they want you to eat really fast and they play quicker, faster music. If they want you to take your time, they play slower music. And I learned about how the psychology of sales and how people market different things towards the consumer. Yep. And I was really intrigued by it. And so I majored in marketing after that because of the fact that I wanted to see how I could utilize not only my ability to be able to talk to people and be social, but also my ability to be able to learn how people actually market to people. And it was a pretty cool and unique field. And it gave me a good opportunity to be able to come out and have some doors open for me.
Wow. Well, good story, Jared. Um, and today, right? You mentioned you're in sales, or well, you were in sales. You had a great career in sales. Number one in the country. Number two, ended up. Tell people what you were an expert at. If you was to call yourself an expert in something.
Well, I'm still in sales. I think from the standpoint, everybody's in sales. Whatever it is that you do, you're in sales, even if you don't know it. If you're single and you're trying to find a spouse, you're in sales right now. Like whatever it is that you do, you're in sales. I think what I do really well from a sales standpoint, I'm very persistent. I follow very strict guidelines to success. I think there are certain things that you have to realize when it comes down to sales, and it's almost like if you're alcoholic or whatnot, and you go to an AA class and they always tell you you're not clean of being an alcoholic. You're a recovering alcoholic. Until you die, you're a recovering alcoholic. And every day you have to make the decision that today I'm not going to drink. And I look at sales similarly in the sense that the day you think I'm a really good salesperson and I don't need to follow the process is the day that you fall off and you're no longer a good salesperson. Yep. So there's certain disciplines that I follow, whether that's if it's cold calling, it's, hey, I needed to hit this certain amount of volume of calls per day. And the reason I did that was because of the fact that I looked at it and said, if I make 50 calls a day, and I know that's my target because I know what my closing ratio is, and I know that every 50 calls I get 5 people on the phone, and every 5 people I get on the phone, I book 3 meetings, whatever my ratios are, then today I might make 50 calls and I might not actually get anybody on the phone.
Right.
But if I hit my 50 calls, the day was a success because of the fact that I did the activity I needed to do to be able to be successful. But if I make 20 calls, I may book 5 meetings. But if I didn't hit my 50 calls, it wasn't a successful day because I didn't hit the actual activity I needed. So it's almost the thought process of, if you go to the gym, I know if I work out and I go to the gym and I eat healthy, I'm going to get in better shape. I'm going to lose weight. I could not work out for a week and I could lose 5 pounds, but that doesn't mean that's a sustainable way. I lost 5 pounds because it was all muscle that I lost because I stopped working out. And that success a lot of times is what drives people to not be successful. So I would say the biggest advantage I have from a sales standpoint, I'm very persistent. I talk to everybody and network with everybody. And then I'm very diligent when it comes to my process that I follow.
No, I tell you one thing, those are the rules of sales. There has to be, you have to follow a process. I'm learning that now because you can make a lot of shortcuts, but the sale is actually in the details and providing value to your customers. And you can quickly, right, skip a step and all your T's aren't dotted. And before you know it, that sale is no longer a sale for you. I've learned that myself. Being this is my first year in sales, and I wish I probably should have talked to you a lot earlier about this rather than having to learn on my own, Jared.
Well, there's a saying that says you can learn from your own mistakes or somebody else's. You choose. So, I will tell you another thing, man, that is really key is you gotta listen to what the people are, what the person you're listening to or you're trying to sell to is saying.
Yes.
Because they tell you what they want. And if you listen long enough, somebody will tell you what they want. And a lot of times it's about being able to tell the person what it is that, you listen what they want, and then you're able to tell it without offending them, right? I always give the people the analogy of this when it comes to sales. If I walk up to you, Antoine, let's say you're not married to Teresa. Let's say you guys are dating and Teresa was a terrible person and me and you were good friends. Yep. And I was like, and I walked up to you and I was like, dude, man, your girlfriend sucks. You're going to initially be mad at me. Like, no, she doesn't. What are you talking about? And your vitriol is going to come back at me.
Yeah.
But if I didn't tell you that, I asked you enough questions, I could get you to understand that your girlfriend sucks without me saying it, without you being mad at me.
Yeah.
So the actual thought process would be, so Antoine, your birthday came, man. What did Teresa do for you? Nothing. Oh, y'all didn't do anything? Did she get you? Man. So what do y'all do all the time? Does she cook, or y'all like to go out to eat, or like she just like chill around the house?
Yeah.
What do y'all have in common? I ask you enough questions, you get to the point where you be like, yeah, man, she kind of sucks. And what ends up happening is you're able to, if you can do that, regardless of what the product is. If it was when I was in Fleet and I would talk to people and I say, so, what do you guys do from a repair standpoint if your vehicle breaks down and you're 250 miles away because you said that's your radius you travel. Oh, we towed the vehicle back. Okay, well, wouldn't it make more sense if you had access to a repair shop that was down the street, or you could actually get the repairs done, and then Enterprise could get you a rental car in the meantime so you can still finish those jobs and didn't have to miss out on the revenue you can make? So I didn't tell you, hey, your process you're following right now sucks.
Right.
I essentially just told you the answer to the question without you making it seem like I'm telling you that your process is terrible.
Right.
So that's a big deal, listening and asking questions.
Yeah, I think that is a skill set, I would say, Jared. When you are in sales, you will get better at. You will get better at listening because, and not only listening, like you mentioned, asking a lot of questions because, like you said, it is a process. And be honest with you, it is somewhat scripted the way how companies have their sales process today. Enterprise, software, not as scripted, but other parts of sales, which in companies, especially, me talking to Teresa now that I'm in sales and, her kind of being my coach, there was a process that you guys at Enterprise really, really followed. And I would say this from a software perspective, all those processes don't work, but there is a process for the software sales, right? And, whether that is solution selling, whether that is, sell like a CEO, it all comes back to a process that does exist, right? And you really have to follow those processes, right? And listening and peeling back the onion is the only way you're going to be able to get the answers and be able to communicate what you want to your customers as well, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think really, if you're going to do that, like I said, there's not really a script you can follow. Everybody thinks that, and you go and you listen to these people and they say, just say this and say it this way, and you're going to get it done. One of the funny things for me is I had a guy named Chris Stanley who was my mentor when I was selling real estate. I was 21, and he was making great money as a real estate broker. And I was like, man, I want to do like that guy. And I remember when I first got my real estate broker's license, I would go out on meetings with him and see how he sold because he was closing a lot of business, selling a lot of houses. And he was a direct, like, get to the point kind of guy. Yep. So he would say, hey, look, man, Pistol, get off the pot. Are you going to buy this house or not? And that was kind of like how he would, his tone he would take. And people would, oh, yeah, man, I'm going to go ahead and get it. And they would do it. Right. And because he knew that was the house they wanted to get or whatever, but like they just didn't want to pull the trigger. And so I was like, I'm going to do just like Chris. And so I took this same kind of approach and I was bombing at it. I'm telling you, nobody was buying from me at the beginning. And I was like, dude, I don't know why this isn't working. And I realized, like, Chris's personality is a more direct. That's his style.
Right.
Me, I'm a joker. I'm going to talk about sports. I'm going to make it as comfortable as possible. And then now there are times where you got to ask for the sale, you got to close, but I have to build that relationship earlier on. Yep. I don't have that personality. A lot of it is learning about what it is that is your style, what are your strengths, and then taking the conversation and catering it to your strengths.
Absolutely. I would say this. I agree 100%, man. So we got a question in the chat from Mrs. Tamara Wade. She says, for anyone thinking about going into sales, what qualities make a good salesperson? You kind of talked about the relationships piece of it, sometimes being direct. Right. What qualities do you think, Jared?
So one of the funny things is a guy told me this last week, and I thought it was brilliant. It was one of our top salespeople at Euler Hermes, and he said, if you walk into a meeting and you're not the cockiest person in the room, you're not going to get the sale. And it's funny that he says that way, but it's the truth. I think a lot of it is confidence. Yep. You have to be able to go into a room and have a conversation and deal with people that are C-level employees and not have that their title or their role intimidate you in any way. I remember at Enterprise, we talked a lot about equal business stature.
Yep.
And there was a meeting I remember going on. It was a guy, and it was a very, very large company. And it was the biggest closure I had, one of the biggest closures I had the entire time I was there. And when we got done, it was just probably a few months later, and one of the owners called me or texted me. He was like, hey, I'm thinking about selling my Corvette. It's only got 10,000 miles on it. I'll sell it to you for $95,000. And for me, I was broke at the time. Like I was like fresh. I had just started closing stuff. And I was thinking, like, I can't afford a $95,000 car. Like, obviously, I'm not at this point right now in my career. But I was happy because he thought I could afford the $95,000 car.
Right.
And that's really that's what mattered, was the fact that the image I portrayed was that myself as young salesperson was on the same level as this C-level employee who was trying to sell me a $95,000 car. Now, I obviously just played it off and was like, man, I'm about to have a kid, man. I'll probably just buy a Range Rover instead. But at the same time, I had no intentions of buying a $95,000 car. And even now that I could get one, like, I have no desire to purchase that. But I think, one, confidence is a big one, and being able to establish equal business stature.
Got it.
Two, discipline. You have to have the discipline to be able to consistently hit your goals and your targets. And the third one, you have to have an ability to be able to be social, but also listen. As I said, people will always tell you what they want to hear. You got to be able to listen to not only what they're saying, but the why behind their saying it, why they're saying it. If they're saying, you know, in my field, you know, selling credit insurance and a lot of other products in that sense, when you're dealing with somebody and they're saying, hey, I would love to do this, but I don't have enough capital, or, you know, if I had more money, I could do it. Then my thought process has to go to, all right, now not only should my approach be, how can I help him get more capital, but my approach should be, how does my product help serve his need that he has? Because if I don't listen to the need that he has and I'm not able to address that, I could go over every product offering I have and tell you why it's awesome. But if I can apply that to what you need and what you said you need help with, then the sale's not going to happen.
No, that's a good one. So Tam, confidence, discipline, and being social, big ones, absolutely. So Jared, you moved to Pittsburgh, right?
Yep.
And you took on the role as the area sales manager there. First time managing was that your first time managing a large sales team?
Yes.
Awesome. So talk about your experience in Pittsburgh.
So it was a fun experience. I think the best part about it was I got there and I got a team of young, hungry salespeople, which was good. The tough thing was they were a very inexperienced team. And so a lot of we had a couple of people that were tenured, but a lot of the people that I was managing were young. And it was really about breaking down exactly what they needed to do to be able to be successful. So I saw the talent there. I saw the potential. But a lot of it was, hey, let's figure out what's your discipline, what's going to be your approach. And, you know, I always tell people, if I wanted to hire people to be like me, I'd go out and I'd try to find, you know, I'd hire my twin brother and I hire, you know, 5 other lookalikes. But I don't want anybody to mirror the way I look or mirror my style. I more want people to find out what it is that they're strong at and to be able to utilize that. So we hit our goals. We were one of 6 groups in the country to win an Exceptional Achievement Award, which is based on our sales numbers, our growth numbers, our profit numbers, and based on some back end stuff where it comes to the amount of losses and risk we took.
Yep.
So we were one of 6 groups that did that. My team did really well, and I felt like the biggest part about it was I learned a lot of other things. I learned, one, I'm not sure that I want to be in management in that way. Yeah. Your time's not your own, which is tough. There's always something going on. I felt like I enjoy going out to sell. I enjoy closing business. I'm a married man, so I kind of get the thrill of, you know, I don't go out hunting anymore, but hunting for work is kind of my going to the bar now. So I enjoy being able to go out and to talk to somebody and close a big deal. And so what was happening in a lot of cases was I was going out on meetings and helping people close big deals. And then, I get the role. It's not about me. And so what happens is now, you know, you put all this work in and then it's, hey, let's celebrate the person who closed it, who you helped close it. And that satisfaction, I enjoyed getting that myself. Now I enjoy seeing other people be successful. I'm not selfish in that way. But the role I felt like it was so much time spent there, and the rewards were trying to be able to figure out how could you help other people be successful. And that was obviously fun, but it wasn't the same enjoyment as I had. And I was doing a lot more. I was spending a lot more time, you know, following up on Salesforce, making sure people's reports were right. Yep. Like, it was like by the time you got done with it, a lot of the back end things were really what made the job more difficult. I enjoyed going on meetings with people and helping them be successful, but it was so much more of, hey, you know, are you coming into work on time? Are you, you know, have you updated your pipeline? What do you have in the queue? Let's do a one-on-one meeting. Let me figure out how, you know, why you coming in sad today because your dog was sick, as opposed to, you know, when I come in myself, it's just like, man, I don't think about anybody else. Sales is a selfish role, and I care about people, but when I go in the office, I'm more worried about how can I get the job done, and don't really spend a ton of time thinking about, you know, what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, you know, that's interesting, Jared, because we are the complete opposites, right? And the reason why I took on this sales role is to continue to, you know, move up the corporate ladder, right? But my enjoyment is to see people have success, right? That's what I enjoy. And I must say, for me personally, my first deal, I closed it November the 30th, right? And it was basically $500,000, right? So my enjoyment was seeing my customer happy. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it myself personally because it was my first deal within the first 4 months of, you know, my career in sales. But it was a wonderful experience. But what I do enjoy is developing teams, right? And leading teams to reach organizational goals, right? So this whole sales thing of, you know, somewhat being an individual contributor, owning my own land, I would say, being responsible for eating steak or bologna, right? It's a bit different, right? It reminds me of when I first started my career as a software engineer, and I just was responsible for doing one thing, right? Versus the larger picture, right? So no, I get it, and I must say, salespeople, they are selfish. They can be assholes, and I'm learning how to be that person today, man. You know, that's one area of improvements that my boss said to me after I did my 6-month review, and I was like, you know, it's time for me to have a 6-month review. I closed my first deal. I'm probably going to hit President's Club, but here are some areas where I think I can improve. What are your areas to improve? What do you think that I should improve in? And he says to me, Antoine, I would say persistence is number one. Keep at it. I think a lot of the times you will accept an answer and not try to be a pest to people, but sometimes you got to be a little bit more pushy. And two, he said, you know what? Sometimes you just got to be an asshole. You're a nice guy, Antoine. You got to be an asshole, right? And I'm just like, all right, you know, yeah, I'll figure that out, but I'll learn over time. So those are the areas that, you know.
That's big, man. I'm telling you, I had a deal got done. It was last week. The guy gave me the verbal, and I was with my wife, and I happened to be in the car. And the guy, I finally got the guy on the phone, and he's like, "Yeah, let's go ahead and do this." And I said, "All right, great. So when can I come pick up the check?" And he was like, "Oh, you know, we'll figure that out. I need to do the paperwork and things done." I was like, "All right, cool. Well, you know, I want to make sure I get the check before the end of the month because I want to get everything set up because." Literally from the month in, if I get it in before the end of the month, I can actually set everything up and backdate it to the beginning of the year. But I can't do it. And so we get off the phone and my wife's like, "Yeah, you kind of sound like pushy a little bit with the guy." And I was like, "Look, if you don't,
you have to."
I've had so many people that will tell you like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do it," and until you get the check, like it's that girl who's like, "Yeah, I'm going to call you," and until you get something on the calendar, or you figure it out. Then she's just gonna be you're gonna be the guy that pops up at the bar and you're gonna see her and be like, "Oh, that was the girl who I went out with her like 5 years ago. She never called me." So like at the same time, you gotta be an a-hole sometime, man. You gotta pull it off.
I would agree. We got some good questions in the chat here, man. One is from my sister-in-law Ashley. She said, "Did you prefer attending an HBCU or PWI?" Right? HBCU being A&T or Clemson, right? But a PWI. And what was your experience, or how did your experience go?
So they were so different. I would tell you, going to Clemson was a great experience in the sense of this, right? So for a lot of people that don't realize, when you look at like a Serena Williams or Venus and all those people, before I was playing tennis growing up, before Venus and Serena were, you know, Serena's I think 2 years older than me. So I was growing up not with having a lot of those players that were playing that. So we grew up playing tennis, my whole family. Me and my two brothers all played Division I tennis. And we grew up playing in South Carolina, in like the deep South country. We were playing a lot of country clubs that had just gotten integrated. Because early 90s, like a lot of these country clubs, they weren't allowing black people to play at all. And I remember playing in your tournaments and you're like 8 and you know these people are like, get off the court, you niggers, and blah 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 blah, and you're 8, right? And you're like
No.
you're trying to figure out like, Mom, what's going on? And I remember the thing that I got out of that. My mom always told me, she was like, and my mom and my dad were always. My dad's a really good tennis player, and they always said, you know, do not respond, don't react, and always carry yourself in the best light, because you might be their only experience with a black person, and how they view you may be the way they view your entire black race, right?
Yep.
Fast forward that to going to Clemson. Clemson is a very, very white university.
Yep.
If you watch football and you watch the basketball, and even if you looked at our tennis team, we were very black. Our tennis team had 12 players on it. 6 of us were black Americans, right? That's not something that you see a lot of in tennis. But with that being said, I learned a lot in the sense that it was a very disciplined team. Our coach, Coach Creasy, who is one of the greatest college tennis coaches of all time. They called him the Bobby Knight of tennis. When I say this guy had quotes on top of quotes, but he was crazy. Like, they called him Crazy Creasy. He would literally, I remember we had a match we almost lost, and he broke a TV. He was intense. But what he did was he instilled this work ethic that we had. So to make the team, you had to get your mile under 5:20. You had to get your 3 mile under 18 minutes. You had to do all these different things to make the team. And then we ended up playing, and we had a talented team, but we weren't super talented. But we finished up. We made it to the Elite 8 that year and beat Duke, who was number 5 in the country. And we literally beat them because their players were up in the matches and then caught cramps, and we beat them off endurance because we had outworked people so much that year. And so what I learned at Clemson was the discipline that I needed to do. I learned that, you know, that 5:20 mile, I'd never run a mile under 6:30 in my life before I got to Clemson. And so I learned, and I remember when I beat the 5:20 mile, Coach Creasy, I called my brother as soon as I get done. I'm like, I got a 5:19.8, blah, 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 blah. I barely got it. And Coach Creasy's like, hang up the phone. And he's like, if I told you the mile time was 5 minutes, you would have broken it weeks ago. You would have broken 5:20 weeks ago. And I thought about it, and I was like, he's probably right.
Right.
And, you know, the thought process of, you know, Roger, I think it's Holloway, whatever, the first guy who broke the 4-minute mile time. Before that, everybody said it was physically impossible to break a 4-minute mile. And then he broke it. And then the next year, 6 people broke it. And then the next year, 40 people broke it. The next year, 120 broke it. And then now you go to a high school track meet, and a lot of people were breaking 4-minute miles. But Roger Bannister. And so until Roger Bannister broke it, though, nobody thought it was possible. And it wasn't that people's bodies changed when this happened. It was that their mindset changed. And so a lot of the things that I thought were impossible physically or mentally, I was able to get accomplished at Clemson. But with it being a PWI, private white institution, it was one of the most racist universities in America. Like, wow. I will tell you, people probably forget about this, but like right after I left, there was a huge, on Martin Luther King weekend, they had a black party, right? And it was a white fraternity, and everybody went blackface, yeah. And had gold grills, and they had to wear name tags that was like Shaquisha or whatever. Like, it was super, super racist. Yeah. And I mean, that was a lot of the experience that I got when I was on campus. But our team had so much camaraderie. There were so many black athletes that I still have good relationships and friendships with to this day. I still remember that time very, very fondly. I will tell you one last story about Clemson. It kind of gives you the example of how that was. One of my teammates, his brother got in a car crash and passed away my freshman year. And so I was on a full academic scholarship. I didn't go on tennis scholarship because there's not much tennis scholarships out there. So when we went to the funeral, I talked to I was a biology major when I first got to Clemson because I wanted to be a doctor. Didn't realize I hated sciences until I got to college. But what ended up happening was I talked to my biology professor, and I said, hey, my teammate's brother passed. We're all as a team going to the funeral. I will be back to get the information I missed from class. So I showed back up afterwards, as I told her I would. And I said, hey, I just wanted to go over everything we went over in class. And she's like, don't worry, you wouldn't understand it. And I was like, what do you mean I wouldn't understand it? She's like, well, you know, you probably got enough affirmative action and whatnot, so don't worry about it. And I was like, no. Wait, she said that out loud. Like, and the crazy thing was, I was like, actually, I want a full academic scholarship, but don't worry, I'll just get it from somebody else. And I left because in my mind, I was like, I can't stand here this much longer. I'm going to say something that I shouldn't say. But that was the mentality of a lot of the people on campus.
It's South
And
Carolina.
so
It's South Carolina, Jared, right? So what
it
part of
is.
South Carolina did you grow up in? Because my family and we grew up in Orangeburg. What part of
Yeah.
South Carolina did you grow up in?
So I grew up originally in Sherrill, South Carolina, which is out like you passed it on the way to Myrtle Beach. It's in the boonies, right?
Okay.
But you pass it. It's about an hour and a half from Myrtle Beach. And then I moved to Fort Mill when I was like 11 or 12. And Fort Mill is right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. So it borders Rock Hill. It's borders Charlotte. So growing up, Fort Mill was a weird town in the sense that it's very, very ritzy white area. My graduating class had 317. I want to say there were 4 blacks, including me and my twin brother. And it is one of the best. I'm telling you, it's one of the best school districts in the country. I think it was rated top 3 in public school in America as far as school districts went. And we were very good at tennis. We were very good at baseball. We were terrible at football. And that was kind of the school I grew up in. And so going to Clemson was more of me just going to more. There were so many Clemson people that went from my high school. Going to A&T was a different experience. It was very, very unique because you go to a place where now you're no longer the minority, you're the majority. You get to see a lot of, you're obviously, I'd be lying if I said there weren't a lot of very, very attractive black women there, which was a very positive for me.
Yep.
But on top of that, you get to a school where you're seeing people with different talents, with different backgrounds, with coming from different cultures, and you're seeing a lot of black people that are doing positive things.
Yeah.
And what you don't get a lot of times when you go to a school and there are very few black people there, then you see a lot of the exploits from they're super athletic or this guy's going to the draft, but you don't see the guy that's starting his own tech company or the engineer who's working for NASA now. And when you went to A&T, you got to see a lot of people that were doing positive things. And it was a place where I was able to grow and learn as a student and to be able to and build your confidence up, because you go to a place to where, as I said beforehand, where the professor thinks, hey, you're in here off affirmative action, and that's kind of the stereotype that's being projected on you, to now you're going into a place where people believe in you, where you're getting a lot of people instilling the values that you have, and you're seeing a lot of other people around you do great things and be successful. So I thought the experience, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I think I learned a ton from Clemson.
Yep.
But I will tell you, and there's still a part of me that wishes I graduated from Clemson, from a selfish standpoint, in the sense that when you go to Clemson, I'm sure they do this in a lot of schools. They say, look to your left, look to your right. One of you guys is not going to graduate from here. And I was one of those people that didn't, right? But it wasn't because of the fact that it wasn't from the fact that I couldn't. It was from the fact that my 2 brothers were at A&T. I saw an opportunity to be able to actually start on the tennis team, and our tennis team, we had a guy who wasn't starting who eventually played in the French Open. So I was like, this probably isn't going to happen. And so I left. And so a part of me wanted to, just because of the same professor stereotypes, wanted me to finish up there just so I could prove those kind of people wrong. But
you always want to prove those people wrong. Yep.
You know it, but I wouldn't trade my experience from A&T at all. I say Aggie pride wherever I go, and that's why on the back of my car I got the A&T alumni, because that's where I think I developed and grew into a man.
That's a bad. Well, I wouldn't say that's a bad experience at Clemson, right? It taught you a lot, but wow, that's something that you would think would have been past at the time that you were going. And what year did you graduate, Jared? 2006, 2005? College.
Graduate college?
Yeah.
07.
Okay.
07. I was class 07.
Got it. So you're just right behind me. What are you, 30, 35, 36, 34?
33. Turned 34
okay.
in 3 weeks.
Cool, man. Cool.
So what I will tell you, though, is if you think Clemson is far behind as far as that goes, and they are in some cases, there's a university down the street from Clemson called Bob Jones University. It is still the only university in America where biracial dating is prohibited and you will be expelled.
Wow.
That is still going on today.
That still exists in America today. Wow.
In 2019, and think about how crazy that is. But that just kind of gives you a synopsis of the area that we're talking about in the country. It is still a very, very ass backwards system over in that part.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's Ashley said that was great advice from your parents. I think she was referring to the part where you're talking about your tennis experience, where you had somebody yell at you when you're 8 years old, right? Yelling the N-word at you. And, your parents said to to you and your brothers, that may be the only African American that they may see. So you always want to keep your head up and you would want to maintain your professionalism. I think that is a good absolutely advice, right? We have another question in the chat, and let's see what we got here from Mrs. Tiffany Way. She says, describe a time when you had a difficult client and how you handled that situation to close the deal. Or if you didn't close the deal, how did you learn from the experience?
Yeah, so here's the deal. So I will tell you one of the deals that I went on that was so there's some times where you're going to go out and people are going to be difficult, and it is what it is, and you may not close it, and those people aren't the ones that get you. The person that is difficult, you're kind of it's like this, right? I say sales is the closest thing to dating. As anything you can think about from a sales standpoint is the closest thing to dating you possibly can find. I can give you a million analogies to tie it in. You can give me any part of sales and I can relate it to any part of dating. But I say it like this: if you have a person, let's say I go on a date and somebody's difficult to deal with, I'm not really that sad when they leave. If I go and I talk to her at a bar and she's kind of giving me attitude and I don't get her number, it's kind of oh, whatever, that's her loss. But it's the person that's oh, yeah, I'd love to go out with you. Here's my number, blah, 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 blah. And then you call them and they never call you back. That's the frustrating one. And so I will tell you the one I had that was one of the most frustrating. I was dealing with a company, and this is when I was with Fleet, and they were a huge company. They had 343 vehicles at the time, and they were growing. And I did this whole presentation, and when I tell you I killed this presentation, I killed this presentation. Even my VPs were on the presentation. They were like, I don't think there's anything else you could have said differently. That was perfect. And we leave the meeting and the people are like, yeah, this sounds like the perfect program. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do it. I'm like, fantastic. Let's go. And so they're like, hey, we're going through an RFP process. I have to, hear from everybody else, but you're in a really good position. I'm like, all right, fantastic. And a couple weeks later, we hear back, and they're like, "Yeah, guys, we didn't go with you." And I was like, "Wait, what? Why didn't you guys decide to go with us? Somebody else beat us in price, whatever. What was it?" And the lady was like, "Yeah, it had nothing to do with that. We thought you guys had the best program, but we just didn't feel like changing." So that one, when you get done with it, I'm telling you, it was one of the most frustrating. Because if this deal closed, I would have made $40,000 off of that deal alone. So it was a situation to where, you know what, it wasn't going to change my life, but it was definitely going to help. I might have had a better vacation that year, a couple better vacations. But what I did with that was, I looked at it and I said, I can't, I really can't dwell on the situation. If I dwell on it and I allow that to affect my approach, then it's gonna negatively affect me the rest of the year. And so what ended up happening was, the day I found that out, I was dialing, I was making calls, and I was still super pissed off. And I was short of my $50 that I wanted to make, and I almost left and went home. And I just kept making dials, and it was 4:45, and I actually made dials, and I called this other company that was a huge company that had about 700 vehicles, and the guy happened to pick up the phone at 4:45, booked a meeting, and eventually closed them. And so that day, there was an opportunity for me to walk away and to go home and to be pissed off and to complain about it and moan and whine and whatever. And what I did was, I took that opportunity and I said, I'm going to continue to do what I know to do. My old tennis coach, as I said, he had quotes for days. And I was listening. He does a podcast now, and I listened to his podcast a couple weeks ago. And he said, there's a difference between doing things right and doing right things. And he said, you can do a lot of things right, and the things that you're doing aren't actually right. I can do it. If I want to rob a place, I can do a robbery correctly. I can wear gloves, wear a ski mask. I can do things correctly.
Right.
But there's a difference between doing right things. And in that case, I could have gone home and I said, hey, look, I made calls today and it was just a tough day. But the right thing to do that day was to make sure that I hit the goals that I set for myself. So one of the biggest things I can tell you is, whenever you hit that road bump, a lot of times right behind that is the interstate where you're really going to take off. But what happens is people hit that speed bump and then they say, oh, this road's bumpy. They turn around and go opposite direction.
Yep.
And so that was the biggest advice I can give you when you have one of those deals.
That's you think about that in a personal situation, just in life in general. That applies to life too, right? I'm like, you're gonna have your stumbles around, right? And something isn't gonna happen your same way, but you got to continue to focus on your goals, Jared. That's an absolutely fantastic story. I think about a time this year, and the good thing for me is, after being in this role for about 7 months now, I've had a couple losses very early, right? And my experience for a customer of mine was I was supposed to get a renewal, even an upsell for an upgrade, a little bit over $300,000, and this customer just led us on. We had a good upgrade call. We didn't have to go in RFP because they weren't looking at any other solutions. They had SAP in there for the ERP system, but they're using us for a manufacturer visibility. So, long story short, sent the paperwork over. He was like, okay, I'm gonna sign it this week. Kept pushing it off. Comes November the 27th, we still haven't gotten the paperwork yet, right? And this is just for the upgrade. So I'm already thinking that I have a renewal already because they're going to continue to use the system, or we're going to be an upgrade, right? Come November, these guys decided to turn the system off completely. Said he lost his budget, and seriously, it was probably one of the worst experiences I've ever felt. I went home that same day, right? And I was like, what can I do to kind of get this out of my head, right? And, me and Teresa, sat on her back and had cigars, and she kind of coached me through the same situations that you're talking about. But, it is rough, but you do have to stick to a process to accomplish your goal, right? Because, although I was impacted by that same night from losing something like that, you feel bad too because they're an existing customer. The next day, I was up the next morning ready to go, right? And ready to go to get the grind on again. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. That is a wonderful story, man. Completely.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, man. It's tough to do, man. When I say that, those are situations to where you don't want to deal with it. One of the things I've learned, and this is just some sales advice, is whenever you have that situation where somebody tells you, I'm going to get the check to you this day, I always follow it up by saying, fantastic. How about this? If I don't get it back from you by Friday, let me schedule some time for Tuesday to just come and pick it up, and then I can answer any questions you have. And that way, I'm going to be at your office that next Tuesday so you can't push it back. And it may sound pushy. I'm telling you, it works because you tie people down to a time, they'll get it done. But what happens is, it's like the girl, who's hotter than the hottest girl you met 1 month ago? The girl that was average that you met 2 days ago. You know why? Because you remember what she looks like. Exactly. So at the end of the day, as my sales dating advice goes, that whatever it is that you sold a person on, the longer it goes, the more they forget what that was. The more they forget why they were excited about it. And then, it moves to the back of their minds and eventually becomes a non-priority.
Yeah. I am learning in this conversation, Jared. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on. Not only for me to learn, because you are an expert at this, I wanted to personally learn. So thank you so much for carrying the conversation. And, I've taken some notes down, and I'm, listening very, very close, because this is going to help me make my year right now, guys. So let's move on to a different subject. We're running on time right now. Jared, I'm assuming you're free to continue to go, right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, good. Perfect. All right, so let's move on to some other questions that I had in here is, what are your thoughts on Black Heights and this initiatives?
So, man, I'm very excited about what you're doing, man. I think one of the cool things is, as I said beforehand, being in management was tougher because of a lot of the different things that you got to, you had to deal on the back end. But I'm very, very involved, very much so involved in helping young Black people to be able to learn the skills and the tools to be able to be successful. And one of the things that I saw when I was here working for Enterprise Fleet, there was a company I closed, and they had there was two sides of their business, and one of their sides was they did lawn care. But what they did was they had all these inner city Black kids, and they would bring them on board, and they would train them on how to not just cut grass, but how to be a professional landscaping professional.
Yep.
And then what they would do is, after they trained them, they funneled them into their business, which was a nonprofit. And then once they did that, they were able to generate enough income, and then eventually they would phase them out, and they would go get jobs at other companies. Because what happens in a lot of those cases is you needed to be able to have enough experience and work experience, not only to know what you're doing, but to have the work experience and the history. And so he was, at the same time with this 501c3, he was training people, and then he was giving them a job, and then he was getting them into the workforce. And one of the cool things I see that you're doing right now is you're training people on how to be successful in different areas. And I think that's very important because, you know, the Bible talks about how, you know, we perish because of lack of knowledge, you know, and at the end of the day, when it boils down to it, the only thing that's going to help people to be successful, that's why when you ask me beforehand about whether I'd rather $1 million or the higher IQ, the IQ gives me the ability. I think if I can have more knowledge and I can have better expertise and I can think better, then I can do better.
Yep.
Anybody that thinks about a certain amount of money and they think like, oh, if I had that, I'd be good. That mindset will never, that's the lottery mentality of, hey, mega balls coming back, Powerball, mega millions, whatever.
Yep.
If I hit that, I'm going to be good. The problem, the reason why most lottery winners eventually end up going broke is because of their mentality. Because your mentality by buying lottery tickets says that you make bad purchasing decisions. When somebody tells me, hey, the lottery is at $2 billion, I said, you know what that means? 50% is going to education and the fees. 50% is going to pots. That means 4 billion people played and lost. And you're still going to give your money. Now, I'd be lying if I said when it gets to $2 billion, I don't throw a couple of dollars in there. But typically,
you do.
I do. I mean, at that point, the risk is higher than the reward. But at the end of the day, the reason why most lottery winners eventually go broke is because of the fact that they make bad purchasing decisions, which is why they were buying lottery tickets. And likewise, I think teaching people how to be able to make the right decisions and to think correctly is what's going to eventually lead to us being able to be as successful as possible.
Absolutely. I would say level of professionalism as well, right? Which is another area where you focus on, right? Is going back to the advice that your parents gave you during that tough situation. We got one more question in the chat from Mrs. Tamara Wade. She says, hi, Mom. Thank you for watching as well. Going back into your experience at Clemson and what your teacher said. This is when your teacher said about the affirmative action thing. Or the stigma that blacks only excelled at sports versus your experience at AT&T, where you saw a lot of African Americans excelling in all fields. Do you think that the unqualified perception placed on blacks is why there's a lack in corporate America? Ooh, that is a really good question.
I think that's a very good question. I think
exposure was a large piece of it, right? Going back to your earlier on tennis days, they don't know much. So how do you know if they can be part of the club? That's kind of the mindset. So go ahead. That's a great question.
So what I would say is this, right? And I was in a fortunate situation in this case, right? I had a very good opportunity to be able to see a lot of people be from a different mindset, right? I'll give you this example. Right? I grew up playing tennis, and I didn't grow up in a rich family by any stretch of the imagination, but mom's a teacher, dad, really good job. We grew up, middle class, maybe slightly upper middle class, but probably right at middle class, right? Yeah. And a lot of, so as a black kid, I didn't have a ton of black people that I knew that had two parents and lived in the middle class and were able to have the experiences that I had. And those experiences in a lot of cases weren't, it wasn't like we were balling by any stretch of imagination, but do you have the ability to go on vacation? Do you have somebody that's going to follow up with you and make sure you do your homework? Do you have somebody that's going to do the things that are necessary to help you to be successful? Also, I grew up playing a very rich white man's sport. Grew up playing tennis. I didn't realize until I was probably 16 or 17 that everybody I played tennis with was rich, right? You're a kid and you don't even think about like any of these things. And I'll tell you, this is when the first time I realized that I realized one person. I was 12, right? I have a cousin who's very close in age. I know not age. He's older than he's very close to family. and we went to a department store. We went to Belk's, and we were in the store, and my cousin was 17 at the time, and he was looking at some shirt. He took the shirt off the rack and he put it back on the rack, and when he put it on the rack, I guess the security didn't see that he put the shirt back down. So they saw him walking around, didn't see the shirt. So they put him in this like security room, questioned him, thought he had stolen something. He obviously hadn't stolen anything, but they did that. And he was a minor. They didn't ask for my mom, who was, with any of that stuff. And I remember my mom was so pissed off, and she's like, and one of the guys I played tennis with was Ike. And she's like, I'm going to call Ike's dad. And I was like, what are you calling Ike's dad for? And Ike's last name is Belk. I had no idea that Ike's dad was like the CEO of Belk's. I had no idea. And their his granddad started Belk's. And up until 2 or 3 years ago when they sold it, me and Ike are still really good friends. But at the time, like, you're a 12-year-old, you're not thinking about like, right. Hey, everybody I'm playing tennis with is very wealthy. And the same thing happened. There's a kid in Greenville, South Carolina, William Timmons. And I'll mention his name because I'll tell you the funny backstory about it. William Timmons, we were playing him in the tennis tournament. My brother was playing him, and I was talking to his dad, and I was like, hey, so we were in Spartanburg. No, I'm sorry, we were in Charleston, and he's from Greenville. And I was like, so how was the drive from Greenville? And he's like, oh, we just flew in our jet. And I was thinking, wait, what? And you drive through Greenville, and it's Timmons Coliseum, Timmons, Timmons Theater, Timmons. And William, he goes to Naval Academy when he graduates high school. William was kind of this like punkish kid. He was a cool guy, but he was like kind of ritzy, pompous. You would think of like private school kid. And he goes like Naval Academy, and then he gets his degree, or he goes to law school, and then he opens up a CrossFit gym. And I'm like, what is he doing? Like, he's just doing randomness. And then all of a sudden, he ran for state senate, and it was like veteran businessman, attorney, runs for state senate, and then he does it one-term state senate. And now, like 6 months ago, he just got elected to the U.S. Senate. He's 33 years old.
Wow.
And I said, this dude's going to be the president of the United States in like 15 years, right? But the reason I say that is this, right? I was able to be around a lot of people who were, their parents were CEOs of large corporations. And I was able to get comfortable having conversations with people who were very, very wealthy at that period of time. And that exposure gave me the ability to see what they were doing and to look at it and see that as an aspiration. I knew, even though the doctor said I was going to get to be 6'3", 6'4", I knew if that wasn't going to happen, I wasn't going to have a great chance of my jump shot of getting to the NBA. And so I looked at it from a reasonable standpoint of, I wanted to be able to use my intelligence and use my ability to be able to be persuasive to move up the corporate ladder and to do that. I think what happens in a lot of situations are blacks aren't exposed to a lot of those situations. And then the other part of it is a lot of times we don't see a lot of blacks in those positions making decisions. Right. And as much as we can try to put different rules and things in place to be able to alleviate the disparity, in reality, people typically hire people that look and act and remind them of themselves.
Exactly. Right.
Yep. Same way when it comes to dating. Everybody, there's a scientific study that people will date people or find people attractive that look more like them. And the reason is because it self-affirms your belief that you think you're attractive. And so at the end of the day, people typically hire people that look like them because in their mind, it affirms that they are a qualified candidate themselves in the role they're in. And so I think that has something to do with it. I think the perception is obviously there. And I think one of the things that we're seeing a lot of is now out of HBCUs, you're seeing a lot more people come out of there with the confidence and the belief system that they can be successful. And because of that, now a lot of these firms and jobs are going and doing a lot of the job fairs and doing a lot more recruiting out of HBCUs because there are such competent people there. And because those people have the skill set and they have the confidence to believe they can get it done.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You got a lot of, especially tech companies, starting to do that now and partnering with a lot of HBCUs to get the talent, right? It's just a different kind of talent, right? But the talent is certainly great talent. You think about like the Morehouses, the A&Ts, you think about the Howards, all these HBCUs are producing really good talent for a lot of these tech companies. They're just now starting to pull from that pool for that group of people in those groups of schools. But so far, the ones that they've been able to get have been contributing a lot. I've been reading a lot of articles most recently about, Google doing things like that and starting to recruit from HBCUs and getting increasing the diversity numbers there.
Absolutely. My sister got an offer from, she graduated from A&T as well. She got an offer from Google, and she works for Accenture now. She got an offer from Google,
Yep.
Accenture, and I want to
Century
say
Fund.
like five other very large. She's in IT and everything, but she got some very good offers coming out of HBCU.
Education, guys, is important. So, two more questions here, Jared, and thank you so much, brother, for coming on. This has been a wonderful podcast, and you've been, speaking knowledge from a person who's been climbing the ladder, being that example. And this is, you talked about something in your previous statement, the exposure piece of it, right? What is it that you can do? I just remember growing up and always wanted to be a doctor, because the only reason I wanted to be a doctor because my grandma used to work for a doctor, right? And I was like,
Huh?
and I thought about that recently. I was like, damn, like, what about an engineer and all this other stuff? So, what you were exposed to will give you a better opportunity of it. First of all, it's going to open your doors, right, and gives you a better vision of what you can be in the future, right? So that's where the exposure comes in. That these kind of conversations are having it with professionals like yourself and other people that I bring on this show is to provide that level of exposure. And not only that, just to build a network of professional people that's willing to help and improve the diversity initiative that companies have across the world. So going to the last question here, or not the last question, the second to last question. How do you balance work, life, and family? I know you got a lot of things going on. You're a professional, you're in sales, you got a podcast, you do a lot with the family. How do you balance that all, Jared?
Well, I think it's about figuring out what it is that's important and putting the right things first, right? I think it's you can look at it and say there's a lot of things that you have to do, and my schedule is definitely full. But what I realize is you have to figure out how to make time for the things that are important. For me, it's about every day trying to, I'm a Christian, and I try to figure out times in the day where I can, whether it's read my Bible or listen to something or pray or whatever it may be, to be able to get myself grounded for the day. I think it's very important for me to spend time with my wife and my kids. So I try to make sure every day I have time that I spend with each of my daughters, even though my 3-month-old, some of that time is just me, doing peekaboo with her. But I try to spend time with them every day and try to figure out ways I can be impactful. And then the rest of the time, like I look at it as I have this time, whether it's I'm working from home or I'm in the office, I have this time that I'm there. And when I'm there, I need to be present. And so I set goals for the day, short-term goals for that day, whether it's the amount of calls I want to make, amount of emails I want to send off, amount of touch points I want to have, or whatever it is. I set the goal for that period of time. And then when that time's up, then I leave. I don't allow my time. I don't bring work home. I mean, there's sometimes where I may have to do work while I'm home, but when I'm present with my wife or my daughters, I want to be present. And then when I'm present at work, there may be something that comes up that's more important because, kid gets sick or, wife, not feeling well, something happens, like you have to make the adjustments. But I think the most important thing is putting first things first. And when you're present doing something, be present at that particular event. I think that's the best way to be able to balance it.
No, that's great feedback there, Jared. Moving on to the last question here is, for anyone that comes across this video on YouTube or anyone watching, right? I typically like to do a recap and let the guests give 3 takeaways that they want other people to take from our conversation today. We talked about a lot of things, from education to exposure to how you've been able to climb the corporate ranks. You having a lot of upward mobility. You taking opportunities and creating opportunities for yourself. You being exposed to a lot of things that really give you a mental, the mindset to achieve the things that you want to achieve. What are 3 takeaways that you want to leave the folks here tonight and the folks that's going to watch this video in the future?
That's a good question. I would tell you the first thing, I'll go back to my quote I said beforehand about Roger Bannister. It's before he broke the 4-minute mile. What it's really about is anything you want to accomplish first starts with belief internally and looking at what it is that you want to get accomplished, believing that it's possible, and then following the steps that you need to do to get to that place. When I got to area sales manager and fleet, the reason I wanted to get to that position, and I got there before I left, was I was the first fully African-American person to get to area sales manager in the company's history.
Wow.
And there's a couple mixed, where there's a guy that's black and Asian, a guy's black and white. Not, they may identify as black, whatever, but I know I was the first 100%, African-American male to get in that role. And a lot of me doing that, I looked at it and I said, I remember when I first went to the first national sales meeting, there were 3 of us black people that were in the room, and I was brand new. And, we didn't have a lot of diversity within the company in that role. Mm-hmm. And I looked around and I said, I'm going to do really well so that they have to hire more black people, because I said the reason we don't have this diversity is because when I looked at that top 10 list that we had on the stage, there was no diversity in our top 10. Yep. And so what I did was I said, I'm going to perform so that when they look at what a successful person is, that they look at the diversity I have and they say, well, maybe he taps into a different market, or maybe he has a skill set that we haven't seen, or maybe we should just look around because there may be other qualified candidates we've overlooked. Mm. And when I left, the last national sales meeting I was at, there was over 50 black people that were, or at least people of diversity that were in those meetings. Mm. They hired my 2 brothers on, literally one of them in Charlotte and one of them here in Atlanta. And growth and diversity. And I think, and I'm not saying that was all because of me, but I think the ability to be able to have some success was definitely very key to that. So I'd say the first takeaway is set those goals high and don't limit yourself based on what you've seen happen beforehand. Mm. Second thing, if you're looking at being a successful salesperson, listen to what people tell you, right? Because the only way that you can show somebody what they want is to hear what their needs are. One of my favorite quotes is of Steve Jobs, the former founder of Apple before he passed away. He said, people don't know what they want. That's why you have to tell them. Right. And but inherent in that is the only way you can tell them what they want is to figure out what their needs are. And the only way to figure out what the needs are is to listen. So listen to what people are have as a need, figure out a solution to where you can solve that problem, and then show them what their need is. Right. I never knew that I wanted a GPS on my phone along with a camera and to be able to look at the internet and watch a game and be able to log into Facebook. But you know what? He gave me this iPhone and now I couldn't live without it. So I think that's, a big takeaway is figuring out what those needs are and addressing it. The last thing I would tell people as far as from a sales standpoint is to follow a process. Whatever it is that you're doing, there's a process. Don't try to remake the wheel. Then use your personality, use the strengths and the skills that you have to be able to be successful, but follow the plan. Whatever that plan is, figure out. And when I tell any person that wants to learn how to be successful, figure out what your ratios are. You need to know, all right, out of how many meetings, how many of these do I close? And then back into the number. If this year I want to make $250,000, then I need to figure out, all right, how much revenue do I need to generate to be able to get to $250,000? And then, all right, to get to this revenue, what's my average sale? All right, how many sales do I need to have to get to that revenue? All right, well, how many phone calls does it typically take for me to set a meeting? And how many meetings does it take for me to get in a sale? And then back into the number that you need to get to at the beginning. If I can start off by saying, all right, every 50 dials, I book a meeting. If I need 5 meetings a month to get to this amount of revenue, to get to this amount of meetings, to this amount of presentations, and this amount of presentations generates this amount of closures, and this amount of closures generates this amount of revenue, and this amount of revenue generates the amount of income I want to make, then I know every day that I come into work, that 50 dials is my goal. It's not that revenue number. That number down the road, that's just a number, right? I don't need to know when I want to get muscles. It's a funny thing from the Central Intelligence movie with The Rock, but Kevin Hart was talking to him, and apparently he was the fat kid in high school, right? And he said, he said, how'd you get what's your secret? How'd you get these muscles? And he said, I tell you, but you can't tell anybody. He said, I work out 6 hours a day, every day, for the last 25 years. Right. At the and that was his whole thing. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing. If they're like, so how did you hit these sales numbers? How do you do this? I make 50 calls a day, every day, no matter what. Yep. And if I don't hit my 50 calls today because I had to go Monday, I had to drive all the way to Willacoochee, Georgia, then you know what? Tuesday I'm hitting 75, and Wednesday I'm hitting 75 until I get back to my 150 number that I was supposed to get to. Never let anything stand in the way of your process if you know your process works. Those are probably my 3 takeaways.
I love it. I love it, Jared. No, let me do a quick recap. Right, set goals, right, and keep those high. Don't limit yourself. You know, you really want to have the belief. Listen, I think that is a skill that you will develop over time within sales. But a lot of people do not listen. Even when communicating, they are looking for that first response. And this is not just about sales. This is about everyday life and everyday conversations. I see it all the time on YouTube. I see it all the time in politics. I see it all the time when you're just having a conversation with somebody. They're just looking to respond. It is best to listen, guys. Listen. And third, I would also say, follow the process. You have to follow the process, right? I think one of the things that I would say, Jared, is that probably taught you well was sports. There is a process to sports of practice. And as much as practice sucks, you have to do it. And I would say this, that really does help you understand that the process does work, right? And to buy into a process as well. I wholeheartedly believe that sports has helped me look at processes and say, okay, if I do this, I know what the results can be. If I practice hard or if I work out hard, I know that there's going to be results here because of there being a process that exists right there. So you're absolutely right, man. Those are some 3 wonderful takeaways, brother.
I appreciate it, man.
I like to be able to give people a contact from my people that come on. Do you have a LinkedIn or a Twitter or a Instagram where people can follow you? I mean, like, obviously you're going to come across a video, you're going to be like, I like that guy, right? So do you have a Twitter, Instagram, or even your podcast for people to listen to? What information do you have out there? Do you want to share?
So on Instagram and on Twitter, I am at JaredMan85. So JARED Man85. We have our podcast, me and my 2 brothers, we debate sports topics. It's called the Amibros Podcast. So AMIBROS. So if you type the Amibros Podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, basically any place you can find your podcast, we will give you betting advice. I was very successful this year. Obviously, I bet on Clemson, as I told people to do that. So that was a really nice year. But I've been hitting about 60% for the whole year. So if it wasn't for the Saints, it would have been even higher. Them getting robbed this weekend. But so a few of those. I am on LinkedIn. Any questions you got, guys? You can find me on Facebook or wherever, man. I'm all over. So anybody needs any kind of, whether it's advice or just want to follow me or just want to chat or whatever, just let me know.
Man, I appreciate it, Jared, man. Thank you so much for coming on the Black Heights podcast. Guys, thank you so much for joining in and making this an interactive show. I hope you all appreciate it and learned something tonight. Until next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks.